Hey everybody, this is Dennis Labriola, and I want to welcome you to another installment of Seventh Inning Stretch, the podcast. And this is where we talk about our relationships, the relationships of people that were in my life and maybe in your life that impacted you, and to understand that the relationships that we have with others, well, they impact them as well. And today I wanted to talk about the marriage relationship, which I think is so important and very, very challenging, but yet such a blessing as well if we get it right? And if you're like me, navigating this marriage relationship, well, I got to be honest with you, it probably takes all I can muster to get this figured out the right way. And nobody really gave me a manual on it, although I think there are manuals now. So, but in any way, but I wanted to tap in to the expertise of someone that I know who is qualified to really speak about it. Matter of fact, not just one person, but two, all right? And they're married. We're going to find out a little bit more about them. But two people that I've come to know, and they have really worked at this particular topic of how do we manage our relationship. So please welcome friends of mine, Carol and Scott Forsmith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you,
So
Dennis.
glad that you guys are here with us, and I'm excited about what we're going to find out, because I think we all need, every place I go, and I work with a lot of guys, we're this far from stupid so many times, it's ridiculous.
Why are you looking at me, Dennis?
I'm not. So let me tell you a little bit about our guests, okay? So first, Scott. Scott is a graduate of Stony Brook University, the School of Social Welfare. He is a clinical social worker licensed in the state of New York and a professional supervisor in the social work field. He also attended North Central University and the University of Minnesota, getting his degree in behavioral sciences. And if that's not enough, he also attended 2 years of Bible Institute. So that's so, from my perspective, so important for us to understand the basic for it. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the things that he's done. He's been involved and developed and has implemented, I'm reading this because there's a lot, a therapeutic foster care program here in Long Island, lasting proficiencies in parent skills training, wow, don't we need that, family therapy. He's worked with trauma victims and survivors, as well as Carol. All right, has developed protocols for our elders and dementia care. How important is that? And is trained in eye movement desensitization. I don't even know what that is. All right, but that's okay. That's all right. All right. So also, he's been an active member of the American Association of Christian Counselors since 1994. So he's got some miles behind him, which is really great. Now, equally amazing is Carol. Okay. Now, Carol sent me some of her bio stuff too, and I found out her bio doesn't lead with accomplishments; it leads with family, and I think that was such an insight for me, an insight as to who these people are and the priorities that they have. So she and Scott are married for 39 years. That's good. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Even if you didn't, that was the right answer. All right. She speaks of their daughter, her son-in-law, the 4 grandchildren. She also attended North Central University in Minneapolis, got her degree, but she got her degree a few years later.
Yes.
Right? That's amazing. And she graduated magna cum laude, amazing. She's got an amazing administrative gift. And she helps organize various events and fundraisers for local churches, missions work, and currently is working with Scott and presenting with Scott, co-developing curriculums for whether it be COVID recovery and trauma, something that you call life interrupted, I believe. All right, and of course marriages. We're going to talk a lot about the marriage stuff. The point is, really smart people, okay? What a privilege to have them with us. Thank you for being with us and helping us to navigate this.
What an honor, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you for having
We
us.
obviously can talk about so many different things, but we're going to talk about marriages, the condition of the relationship that many of us have, the challenges that not only that we see, but those that you see more from a clinical aspect of things, and maybe how a couple can really strengthen that relationship, So my first question. All right, I know that you and Carol married 39 years, all right? Obviously, you've seen a bunch of stuff. especially in the work that you do, okay? All your credentials and stuff, really great, but what we really want to know is how the two of you, you have fruit on the tree. That's what we want to see. We want to see the fruit on the tree, what you've experienced, what you really know. Because I'm sure that for 39 years, every moment has been an absolute moment of bliss. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. But so seriously, the trends of marriage, what are you seeing to start us off?
One of the things that we see is couples are waiting longer to get married for the first time. It used to be back in our grandparents' generation, 17, 18 years old, you took a spouse and you made a life.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly all came, and that marriage was kind of more set in stone.
Yeah.
And so now we're seeing young people, they're going forward, they're getting their education first, they're paving their own way, and then they're finding a mate.
Or they're establishing themselves in their career first.
They're establishing themselves in their career.
And then postponing childbirth and bringing their kids into the world. And as a result, what's happening is they're building more of an independence than an interdependence. So their foundation is more self-serving. And, I'm not going to get married until I'm 30 or 35 or 40, and then we'll worry about whether or not we're going to have kids. So rather than drawing together, there's this definition in the culture toward isolation, and self, what do you want to use there?
Well, they're kind of building their own world rather than building a world. See, I was married at 23.
At 23, you were young.
I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, and my wife was a year younger. All right. So we're kids, probably the same as you. So what happened? You develop that life together rather than developing your life separate and then trying to meld them together. Wow, that's incredible.
There's actually something called, it's called attachment theory. And so while there are 4 styles of attachment theory, it kind of goes like this. If you have a healthy attachment to your family and the life around you, when you're a young person, you find someone similar and you start a life together. People with unhealthy attachments, they tend to not find their mate so easy because they have different things that keep them from forming a healthy relationship. So they wait and they wait and they wait, and they gather their career goals and their independence. And while it all looks great on the outside, and believe me, we are not going back to the days where we say that 18-year-olds should get married and start their lives together, because that's very young. There are so many things that could happen in that. But it is a good idea to find your way with a healthy attachment, best you can. Find somebody else with a healthy attachment, start your life, because the storms come. The storms come. The good things come and the storms come. Yeah. And so to be able
that's what life is, right? That's what life is.
To be able to weather them in a healthy way, if you've got a healthy, unemotionally healthier spouse, it's just a little bit easier to do that.
Yeah, I find that as we grow, we collect more baggage, and then we bring that with us into these relationships that we have, and then we got to sort them out, right? And so true. One of the things that always, and I looked at a lot of stats. I saw a lot of stats. I was surprised by some of the stats. All right, and some of the stats are. I actually talk about the divorce rate now is actually a little bit less than it was 15, 20 years ago. But you also have less people getting married now. There's a lot of people.
Cohabitation.
Yeah, cohabitation situations, so which don't really hit the statistics.
Right.
But, I'm kind of a simple guy. So for me, it's about, and I wonder, how can someone who is so much in love at the beginning of the relationship, gaga over the girl, right? And then a bunch of years later, we're in divorce court.
I think the reason, primary reason, there's a bunch of different pieces that that puzzle. Great question. Tim Keller addresses it this way. He says in his book, The Meaning of Marriage, an excellent resource. But he talks about how we set, if we don't have God's plan, because God designed marriage. Marriage was, we hold the sanctity of marriage as, this is God's gift. Yeah. It's God's design. Yeah. So the ultimate goal of marriage is not my happiness or Carol's happiness. It's to help each other become who God has called us to be. Yeah. And so in that relationship, there's a lot of sanding and rubbing and, you know, some chips that have to get knocked off my shoulders in order for me to be more empathetic and more kind and more connected to Carol. But if I'm looking from a standpoint of my happiness, I've already sunk the ship. Because my happiness is circumstantially controlled.
Exactly. Right.
But when I'm called to be the man God's called me to be, encouraging Carol, looking for the gifts in Carol, the purposes that God has put in Carol, to help those things be put on a platform where they can be edified and where God can get the glory, because it's the gifts God put in Carol.
Right.
Now we're moving forward in a way of health and toward health and wholeness.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Tim Keller's, you know, observations, you know, are really, it's not about us. It's about bringing out the best that God has placed in our spouse.
Yeah, I find it interesting too that, you know, when we talk about, you know, if, you know, again, as a simple guy, it's like, you know, I want, you know, give me the one thing, right? Don't give me like 30 things, because I can't do it, you know. But if I look at, you know, what's the one thing that I want, that I desire from my wife? It's respect, okay? And yet I find that what she wants is different. Not that she doesn't want to be respected, but what she wants is security. I find it interesting that God has put in us two different needs that each of us have an opportunity to try to fulfill with His help. All right, and you know, but you know, we get it wrong so often.
You know, and we have our one daughter, and one of the things that I really sought to instill in her, I used to tell her, men want 3 things, and none of them are what anybody else is talking about. This man you're going to marry, this man you've married, he wants the respect and admiration of his wife. He wants the things that he has provided for his family kept in good order. And a good man wants his children close to him. Those are the 3 things that a man wants in marriage. Right? Yeah. Is that what am I pretty close? But that respect piece, yes, it's absolutely. And we as women, we just want security. We want security.
So why don't you jump in, go to what your mom's advice was?
So
Brilliant.
I have a very, my big family is mostly male. So I've got 7 uncles, I've got 3 brothers, I have no sisters. And so my mom was a beautiful, strong woman, but this is the one piece of advice she gave me about marriage. She said, find someone going in the direction you want to go, and then go with him. Yeah. And I went, good okay, advice. Right. Like, and I go, okay.
Yeah.
It worked for us.
It's an aha moment right there.
It is a aha moment, but I found my match.
Yeah.
I found my match, and it has been a pretty amazing
adventure.
It's been an adventure.
Carol and I are clearly, you know, we are 2 strong-willed leaders, and we have great big ideas, and we're not afraid to take on the next hill, whatever that is.
Right.
A sidebar, I don't know if this is going to matter, but we're sitting at our table 3 weeks after the war breaks out in Ukraine. At our kitchen table, I get an email from a friend of mine from college saying, I'm going to Moldova, which is a neighboring nation. He's going to be a refugee, going to help with the refugee crisis there. I look at this thing, I say to Carol, I go, what do you think? Should I see if Keith wants a traveling buddy? This is my wife's response. Don't say no. Keep pushing that door, and God's got to lock that down. And so, as it were, out of her generosity of spirit and our resources, invested, I went to Moldova for 10 days. My wife stayed home alone, obviously, and held down the home front while God did a variety of things. But that's who I married. The woman who says, "Don't say no." The woman who says, "Let's do the next great thing."
Yeah, and I think that so often, at least my experience when I'm dealing with guys, is that they have their own agenda for what they want to do, and they leave their spouse out of it. So everything is independent. I guess my feeling, probably not the best way to handle something like that. I think that those are the things, I find, my sidebar would be that, I was married at 23. Gail was, she was a nurse. We're married 29 years, and she went on to be with the Lord. So I thought, all right, I had my one love, right? And but God, then brought Patty into my life. And so often I find myself saying, because I think God has got such a sense of humor at times, that I married the same woman twice. Because Patty and Gail, they would have been best of friends. And but if you think about it, God wants to fill what I need.
Yes.
So so why wouldn't He give me a similar spouse? And kind of really, really wonderful.
Precious gift.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
So here at SGT, they have their marriage weekend, all right, which Patty and I attend. They also have several of these marriage workshops, all the time. And I know that when I go, I'm always looking for that blind spot that I don't really see. Maybe I can get a glimpse of it. Do these things really, do you find them that they work? Are they valuable? What makes them valuable? And because I know you have these things all the time, which I want to talk about.
I just want to say what you're understanding, and I love what my husband said. It is getting married with the idea of it's not about our happiness is so counterculture to anything else that's going on, because it's like, oh, he just makes me happy, like he causes the butterflies. It is a life, marriage is truly a life of sacrifice. And if you're not willing to be poured out like water on a hot rock and have your life almost dissipated and turned to vapor, you're really not ready to be married. Because it is about what God is doing in this man. For me, it is what God is doing in this man. It is sacrifice, and it's work. However, it's the best work that we will ever do.
That's right.
And so I know that Scott's commitment to me is also to see this happen in my life. And he's given up everything. He's given up everything.
Well, that's what Christ says, though. Didn't he say, if Christ loved the church, we're to love our wives in similar fashion. Well, last I saw, Christ died.
He died.
For the church.
Right.
So aren't we to do the same?
It is that beautiful sanctity of marriage. It is your marriage before
everything.
It's before your career, it's before your ministry, it's before your children.
Before your interests.
Before your interests.
Well, the children grow up and leave, and you're stuck with them.
The children do grow up and leave, and that is a surprise all unto itself.
They do come back.
Yeah, they come back. They come back with babies, but in that waiting time, you are by yourself, and and believe me, Scott and I, we are two very different people. I still reload the dishwasher on him, like he loads the dishwasher on me.
I can't believe you're admitting that publicly.
I am, and he turns around and I go, all right, I got this, and I just reload the whole thing. Why do I do that? I don't know.
It's one of those mysteries of life.
But in that. This man, he is my match. He is my best match.
And so I found someone that can run as fast and keep up. I mean,
Patty runs a little faster than I. So.
We'll do a 100-hour trip. I don't know if it's going to matter, but we'll do a 100-hour trip in Paris. We'll fly across the Atlantic, land at 7 o'clock in the morning. Carol's already got 2 or 3 tours planned. We will spend 100 hours on the ground in Paris. Wow. And we will just go, we'll eat simply, we'll enjoy all the sights we can see, we'll do a bunch of walking tours, and then we just jump back on a plane, fly back here, and start back to work. Because this is how we're wired. This is the compatibility, the desire to keep, what's the next hill? And so back to your question about how do these investments work in marriage? You're talking about marriage retreats, you're talking about workshops that do at church here, and the Sunday school class that Pastor Ted does, highly attended, well received. I think these are all important, and I kind of think of them, Dennis, as like a meal. Right. Because I can't tell you what I had for lunch last Tuesday, but I know I had lunch last Tuesday. Right. And so anything that I can intake is going to help my nutrition and my physical self. I need to do that with my marriage, relationally, with other couples, with the teachings of the church, and any resource that the church has to offer regarding marriage.
And most people know that marriage takes work, but they don't necessarily know what work to do. Right? And I mean, would you agree with that?
What work to do.
Yeah.
What that commitment means.
What does it really? Yeah.
What that it means everything.
Yeah.
And so when in the developing of a marriage, to be able to pour yourself out without reservation. There are some things that men do differently. Like I've noticed that a good man shares his money. Like he earns money, he shares his money. Women share their nurturing self, and so but there's got to be an appreciation and a recognition of it. Scott is great at being generous, and so I just have to tell you this. Back in the early 2000s, so we love missions, and I started an eBay account. How old is that? I started an eBay account, and I had someone who was willing to, a thrift store that was willing to save all of their silk scarves for me. So over the course of a couple of years, we're a single income family living on Long Island, paying tuition for our daughter to go to school. So it's not like there's this ton of money left over anywhere. So I said to my husband, it's important that we go. We're going to have to create the money to go. He says, we have to create the money to go. So Scott said that it would be okay for me to take all this money that we've earned through this eBay account and use it for our missions fund.
Well,
we used it
there you go.
I sold silk scarves and cowboy boots. And in that, over the course of just a couple of years, we earned $25,000. Wow. But Scott allowed all that money to be put aside. It would have been real easy for Scott to say, there are other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this man in his generosity allowed us to put all that money on the side. And because of that, we joined together and we've bought school uniforms to Mexico and soccer uniforms.
Wow.
We have bought baseball equipment, clothing, and medicine to Cuba. We have bought...
We've done marriage ministries in those nations.
Right.
We've done trauma work in those nations.
In Moldova and St. John's, Antigua. And so just because the man said, put the money on the side, we'll use it when we need it.
Well, I mean, you talk about those relationships. I mean, it's not just marriage relationships. Right. When you're sowing into other people, somebody is going to say, I remember that couple.
I remember.
And that impacted their life, and isn't that what life is really about? So
that's where our marriage and the strength of our marriage gets to touch the world.
Yeah.
That's where it gets to touch the world. And so things that we had to figure out behind closed doors about finances and about our goals and ambitions behind a closed door in the privacy of our home got to touch the world.
Yeah.
And so
So let me ask you this though. I mean, because most people, they get married, they realize how hard it is, and they say, I better go to a class, right? I mean, the education and preparation, I guess, has to be much before that. Now, I know you've done some curriculums, okay, to help. I want to talk about those now, So, I mean, the first one that I learned about, did you really call it the good, the bad, and the ugly? I mean, is that really what this is about?
Yes.
Yes. Wow.
We called it the good, the bad, and the ugly because we were just in our kitchen, actually.
Carol's so kind. Carol came up with the title. Carol comes up with all the titles. She walks into the kitchen. I'm getting a cup of coffee on my way down to my office. She goes, hey, look, let's do these workshops called the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm like, what? And then I go, what are you thinking? And so you get just the three spots.
And so we were able to just figure it out between the two of it. So the good is empathy. The empathetic responses that create the warmth and security and stability of a marriage. Knowing that this person is my person. He's my person. And that I can trust him with not only the difficulties, but with the celebrations of life. And so that he'll come alongside me and I alongside of him.
So the bad is crisis, because every couple, every family is going to endure a crisis. And if you're not planning for it, preparing for it, you're going to be consumed by it. Yeah. And so we look at various aspects of, crisis. We do it from a biblical standpoint. We talk about what's happened in the world in the Bible, because those people's lives, there were some real crises in the Bible, and we look at them, we see what we can glean from them, and then we bring it forward, back around to, what is it that we need to do in practicality. So each segment's got a biblical standpoint, a research base, and then the next segment, the additional segment to that is Carol will give real practical and familial examples. So that's the good, the bad, and then the ugly.
Ugly is aging. We just didn't plan for it. We had no idea Our family has been tending to Family Matters for about 12 or 13 years
least,
now. Yeah. And so we look in the mirror and
my dad shows up.
Yeah, isn't that something else?
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And so I look in the mirror, I see my beautiful mom, and it's like, what happened to that youthful, glowing, what happened to my dark and lovely hair? And so
So in one of our workshops, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Carol has one of my pictures of me when I'm about 20 years old. My afro is out to here.
Yes.
I weighed 147 pounds.
Yes.
Dennis, I was gorgeous.
I know. I could say the same. You know,
Thank you.
And I was a rock star back then. Now,
That's right, you were a rock star.
yeah, now I'm just a rock.
to talk about the whole Billy Joel thing, I'm a little fascinated by it. You opened for Billy Joel.
I did, yeah, but
Oh
you know.
my gosh.
Yeah, well, none of us were famous then, so I mean,
That is
and
no
I was never
small
famous.
thing. That is
No,
no
it's-
small thing.
It was a fun part
I
of
actually
life.
found Scott and I said, he opened for Billy Joel.
Oh my.
What else you got, Dennis?
Well, I know that you're. I guess like so when you administer these is it done in how is it done? I mean, one-on-one or
So we
groups?
do it in a workshop. We usually try to keep it to about 30 couples.
Right.
And we oftentimes are doing it in churches.
Yeah.
And the reason we came up with this idea, the Lord gave this to us, was because we found so many churches don't have a marriage ministry.
Yeah.
They don't have someone to implement it or to follow it up. So we've written these workshops from a standpoint of let us bring a marriage ministry, a 3.5 hour intensive to your church, a workshop. This is not, you're not listening to us. We bring humor, people are working on, and it's unbelievable to me. We create these worksheets and we do our presentation, we get people laughing, we get people listening, and then we give them these worksheets for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And everybody in the house is doing these worksheets to discover more and more about what it means to love and be in relationship with one another.
Wow.
It's really quite interesting. So we bring it to the church. A lot of churches do it. We'll have the event, and then they'll have a lunch afterwards, and people just stay by, linger.
Yeah.
Dennis, last time we did this conference, workshop, just a couple weeks back, a woman came up to me. I actually spoke at the church on Sunday following as well. So we did Saturday, and then we went and I spoke Sunday. And this woman came up to me and she said, you don't know this. She said, my husband and I had our divorce papers in hand on Friday. She said, we came to that workshop just on a whim. She said, after doing the workshop and then hearing the message on Sunday, we have tore up our divorce papers.
That's powerful.
And we're going to give this a go.
Yeah.
You know, and to watch God rescue a marriage in the simplicity of some of these exchange of ideas and love for people.
And
That's really
to
drives
be
us.
used. I mean, I know that when God uses me, I mean, it's a wow. I mean, it's like
There's nothing like
oh man, I tell you, I
There's
mean, it's like, are
nothing
you
like
kidding?
it.
There's got to be somebody better else, but yet He chooses us for His design and purpose and what have you. Now, I know you're working on another one, and I love the name of this one because this is called Carousel. You know, and when I first heard it, when Scott shared it with me when we were preparing, right away the images of a carousel came to mind, and it's like, I love carousels. It was a ride, it was fun. I got to pick the horse I wanted to go on.
Right.
I like the music. I mean, it's a I'm trying to think of the name of the device. A
Music
calophone, a calophone.
Oh, you're right.
The calophone was that music. That's the only place you hear it is on a carousel.
You're right.
And and I just love the imagery of that. And then and then going around and reaching for the ring, right? A lot of carousels don't have that anymore. We used to go up to Rye Playland, okay? And Rye Playland, which I don't even know if it exists anymore, but Rye Playland, they had this place and there was and you could reach out and grab the ring. So I love that image, And then as I thought about it, I started hating the image because I'm like, oh, wait a minute, you're on a carousel, you're just going around in a circle over and over and over again. It never seems to go anywhere. And I can't tell you how many times I missed the ring going by. So tell me about this one.
So Carousel is a workshop that we're writing, and Carousel, the title of it is carousel, 1 ticket, 1 ride, how to change horses midstream.
Oh, wow.
So-
Changing a horse on the carousel.
Because we, as young people, when we get on this carousel of life,
Yes.
we pick the brightest, prettiest horse.
Yeah.
And we go around and around. You're right. We absolutely go around and around. And at some point, we go, the persona that I've built, the life that I've built, it just isn't satisfying.
Yeah.
And I need to be involved in more. Now, some people get involved in, they might get involved in life addictions, or they might find themselves in constant debt, or they might always be the victim in life.
Or addicted to excitement.
Or addicted to excitement.
And so what we try to do is we look at the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, and we overlay that on your horse and go, how are the fruit of the Spirit being demonstrated on the horse you're on?
Wow.
If it's not, we've got practical tips and the research, of course, of how to change horses, how to start a new life.
That have those attributes.
That have those attributes, because those are the attributes that
I know a
matter.
lot of guys that want to change horses, but they're talking about changing wives.
Right. No. But you can change your life. The Holy Spirit, He's everything.
Yeah.
He'll help us change. He will help us mold into the image of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and that pleases the Father. The life of ultimate satisfaction, understanding sacrifice and giving and joy and peace and perseverance. It's all there. And so we want to help people that are not kids find a new way. And a lot of times it's a tweak.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not a 180-degree turn.
Right.
It's an adjustment.
Yeah.
It's a new way of thinking. But that's the Holy Spirit.
Sometimes it's just being willing to be willing to change. I mean,
That's right.
I always find that to be the
Right.
first step. The first step is, I don't know how to do this.
The anxiety, people suffer from anxiety, depression. They've suffered for years. Maybe it's just a doctor's appointment that helps them to start changing their life. Maybe it's a counselor's appointment. Maybe it is working through the book of Psalms. My husband loves working through the book of Psalms. And the joy and the peace that brings. But we are not locked in.
Right.
We're not locked in. We can change.
So there's hope. There's hope. There's hope. There's hope. There's hope, everybody.
There is hope.
You know?
Even for us old people, there is hope.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what are you talking about? I don't know. For some reason, it's very easy for a person to get discouraged when they look at marriage. They look at the culture, what culture is doing to marriage. They're changing the definition of marriage. I mean, all of this, and yet, like you said, God created marriage to glorify Him, and to bring us together, and to complete us. I mean, it's such a precious thing if we are able to get this right. And there's no question that the enemy of souls wants to divide us, all of this. So appreciate, because it takes work. And I like some of the movies that I watch are like, all about, I like different, locations, especially like if it's in Italy and what have you. And one of the things I know, I just watched the movie recently, I can't remember the name of it, of this house that was not maintained, kind of abandoned, and it doesn't matter how well that house was built, but if it's not maintained, it decays, but then that song comes to mind that, if it's got good bones, right? We talk about so if the relationship, started well and it has good bones, is there hope for them?
There's always hope. And even if it's a rough start, there's always hope, again, because we're going to look back to the designer. God, created this union. Think about God, holy, perfect, self-sustaining, co-existent, co-eternal, needs nothing. Wow. What does He say? He goes, let us, in the Trinity, let us create man in our own image. God reaches down and creates a relationship with someone that doesn't even exist because of His love just seeks expression. Yeah. And He creates man in His own image. And I don't think it's God has a nose and 2 eyes. I think it's more about the fact that God's love wants to supersede the boundaries of Himself and reach into the lives of others. And I really know that that's what we're called to do. So there's always hope. There's always hope.
when you talk about how God created us in His own image, right? And then He goes and creates Eve, right? And and Adam looking at Eve was like, "Whoa, man!" Right? Became woman, right? So as we, as the joke goes. So I'm sure that there are a lot of people in our audience that are thinking about their marriage now. If they're watching this, they're thinking about it, all right? They're probably thinking about, I wish I had that. Or I had that at one time, I don't feel that anymore. Maybe they've never had it. Maybe they went into it because it was the next step, right? We dated a long time, I guess it's time to get married. And they never go through that process of really finding out, is this the one that God has selected for me? Which I think is so vitally important. What would we say to them?
I'm gonna talk about this for a moment. Since we are created in God's image, and since our spouse is designed to help shave off the rough edges, I don't believe that there's only one person for me to marry. I believe there's a multitude of women that I could have married who are going in the same direction as I, because part of Carol's ministry is to mold me into the image of Jesus.
Right.
So there's different molders, okay?
All right.
And so it's not about finding the one.
Right.
But here's the surprise, Dennis. If you're married, she's the one.
Yeah. Gotcha.
End of story.
End of story.
Yeah, and so that journey point, continues on, and I think that's part of what we try to, build in our workshops is this idea of hope, and this idea of how to connect and how to understand one another, how to move toward one another in an understanding way.
Yeah. What would be the first step for someone who says, my marriage is in trouble? What would you suggest?
It's on your knees.
On your knees.
It's on your knees. It is. And then it is
before God.
Before God. Yeah. And then it is, honestly, it's repentance and tears with your mate.
Yeah.
And the commitment to work on coming closer together and risking. It's terribly risky.
Yeah. It's terrifying sometimes.
It's terrifying because you're just exposing everything in you that could hurt to another person. But it starts on your knees. And then it's repentance and tears with your spouse. Then it's getting rid of the distractions.
What do you say to the person who may not have that relationship?
Yeah, by all means. I think that's a great question. What does that mean to get on your knees? It means the fact that this life is so important to me that I want to build a life of understanding with you. I don't want to win anymore. I want to understand. Because that whole matrix of dominate and control and all that other stuff that dismantle marriages, is at play. So that desire to say, you know what, I wanna understand you. I want to try to build some small step, and it's all small steps. Yeah. It is not erasing the slate and trying to find a new person. It's really about moving forward with the person you have. And if the Apostle Paul says this, if the unbelieving spouse, if you're a believer and your unbelieving spouse leaves, Paul says you're not under constraint at that point. You don't have to try to do, wrangle. It's not peace at any price. Let's say that. Right. Peace at any price means that I'm going to just let myself be stamped on and treated like a doormat. Right. But it's the idea of being able to live with each other in an understanding way. Yeah. Real simple terms, Dennis, understanding way. Yeah. To try to understand what's precious to Carol, what's important to Carol. Yeah. How do I discover that? And a lot of it is through conversation. Yeah. We say, put the phone down, because people are living in this distracted environment.
I know. It's horrible. And I'm as guilty as anyone, for it. But let me just say this. If you don't know God, if you don't know Christ, and you're having trouble, because many times, what's the difference between maybe the Christian and the person who's not a Christian? I would say that the difference is that we have someone that we can go to in whether, in Jesus Christ or God the Father or the Holy Spirit, and we can ask them for help rather than for me to have to do this within my own toolbox, because I don't have the tools to fix my life. I don't have the tools to do the things that are important to me. I don't have the tools to help fix my family's life. So Carol's point, to get on your knees before God, maybe that's the place to start. Maybe you don't know God, but get down, have a little act of faith, and just try to say, I want to connect with you. Show yourself to be real to me. And I think that he will.
You know, love is not always reciprocated.
True.
However, we are not fools for staying in our marriages. We are
right.
not fools for working on it, even when the world says, he did this or she did that, you can't do that, you can't be married to them anymore. We are not fools for staying in our marriage, even after the worst has happened.
Yeah. There's forgiveness and there's healing.
We can
God
go
will
on.
forgive and God will heal.
Marriage made it through the fall of man.
It was damaged, and I know Dennis is finishing his conversation. That's all right.
It's all right, we're good.
So,
Marriage made it through the fall of man. It's also...
but marriage made it through damaged, meaning this. That God says when they choose to rebel against God, and think about this for a moment. We're going to go with this side. This cosmic competition starts in the garden, where the tempter says to Eve, has God said you can't eat of any of the fruit of the garden? And she says, no, we just can't eat of this particular fruit. And the tempter says, because God knows in the day you eat of that, you shall be like God, knowing good and evil. And all of a sudden this competition is set into play.
Right.
And so Eve falls into the competition.
Right.
She partakes of the fruit, gives it to knucklehead Adam, who's standing right there, because it says she hands it to him.
Yeah.
So he partakes of the fruit, and then God pronounces the curse.
Right.
And he says, he says of this, Adam, he starts with the man, it's always us, it's always the leader. Adam, the ground is going to yield thorns and thistles.
Yeah.
The work of your brow is going to be harder. The ground's going to produce less. He says to Eve, your pain in childbirth is going to increase. And then he says this apparently odd statement. And he says to Eve, your desire will be for your husband. And when I read that, I go, so Eve Eve is going to want to have relations with me, or she's going to desire me? But that word desire is the same word in the next chapter where God says to Cain, Cain, your brother's blood is crying out from the ground. Sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you.
Right.
And it's that word dominate.
Yeah.
So going back to Genesis chapter 3, God says to the woman, your desire will be for your husband, but he will dominate you. And now this competition starts to, flood in. And so this is where, cosmically, we have this Adamic nature that is trying to push us apart. And then we have the Holy Spirit that is giving us opportunity to draw together and live with each other in understanding ways.
Amen. Yeah, I know. When I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God for about 5 minutes with Adam. Just that's all I need.
Well, you could start with me, because if you and I were in the garden right now, I'd eat the fruit, and then you could be kicking me, okay?
I know. I hear the same
All right,
thing.
all right.
I get it. So this was great. I think that we got a glimpse of what's possible for our marriages and for the success that God really wants for us, and the happiness, whether it be, it's because there is joy and happiness.
Oh my God.
If we get it right, it's cool, all right? It really is, and it's valuable. So I'm gonna just switch gears here slightly, all right? Because, as an author, all right, I know that I had given you a copy of my book,
Yes.
okay? And you were so kind in the beginning when we were talking. I think before Carol was telling me how even the book kind of fed some of the thoughts for them. But selfishly, is there a particular chapter that really maybe spoke to you?
Yes.
Would you like to go first?
Sure. I found the mouse in the house.
The
most applicable, because it's so interesting, Dennis, because you activate part of our workshop, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the mouse in the house. Because, at the end of the storyline, in the afterward, you're talking about how, there's going to be a leader in the house, and the man's got to be the leader. You talked about your dad, your mom said, when dad gets home, he'll catch it, and you're trying to kill it with a broom. I mean, that's my courageous angle too, as a young person chasing.
I didn't have a bazooka, so I had to use a broom.
Beautiful. But when you talk about in the afterword about a leader is necessary, and when we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, in the bad we talk about crisis. And one of our main points. And when couples in crisis, they need a leader.
Yeah.
And it really falls to the man, the dad, just like you brought forward in the book.
Yeah.
You know, the health of that husband, the health of that man is going to dictate the course of recovery and crisis.
And not to dominate, but to lead and to serve.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And to love.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well stated. Thank you. But thank you. Excellent. Those stories just activated so many memories in my own life. So thank you.
Yeah. How would you do?
I love to hear the story that you had with your dad in your first baseball game.
Yeah.
That's actually the one that made me cry.
Made me cry too.
I'm a Mets fan, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm sorry.
I understand the Yankee thing. But understanding what it must have been like as a child to walk out onto that stadium. And that's an experience that everyone should have. But to have it with your dad and to make sure that he had it with you. There are some experiences as a child that are just really just for us and our parents. And I love that your dad took the idea of getting you to your first game. And what the anticipation, the agony of the anticipation that you spoke about, like, can we just park here? Like,
It was like, it took so long to get there. I didn't realize Yankee Stadium was so far away. It was hours, it seemed.
hours, and what it was like to wait, and what it's like to wait, and we all anticipate, and we are all called to wait. Some for the wonderful things that are waiting for us, and sometimes we wait and the waiting is agony because the outcome is not as stable or as wonderful as we want it to be. But you had the security of your dad who was just going to walk you through this beautiful time of waiting. And so that is a job of a parent.
And for me personally, it was sharing the story with him 60 plus years later. Because we never really, I'm sure that I thanked him, I'm sure that, but as a kid, thanks Dad, and that's it, right? But to share that moment with him 60 plus years later, and for us to have that moment, that was powerful. That was powerful.
What a wonderful experience.
Yes, thank you. So everyone, that's pretty much going to be a wrap for today's podcast. And I want to thank you both for agreeing to be my guest here, for sowing into lives that you may never meet, but they're watching, and maybe that is that seed that they need. What a privilege it was. Thank you for giving us all hope for our marriages, and to know that look, it's going to take some work. I mean, no one's ever said it's not going to take some work. It's going to take some work. All right. It's going to take some work. Let me repeat that. It's going to take some work, all right? But it can and it will help you. So that's really a great thing. Look, for more information or to connect with Scott and Carol, easiest way, I believe, is through your website.
That's right. It's
www.scottforsmith.com. That's SCOTTFORSMITH.com. All right, and he has his videos there, there's materials there, there's connection points there, all that good stuff that you're going to need. And, and we have, if you don't know, we do a new podcast the first of every month. And hopefully, maybe you found this particular podcast of value. Maybe even someone who maybe needs to hear this, all right? You know that they're going through a little bit of a rough spot. It doesn't necessarily mean they're in divorce court necessarily, but even a rough spot, because rough spots don't get smooth until you work on it, right? So you want to be able to do that. So share it with somebody else. If you want to find some other episodes that we try to talk about all these relationship things. You can just go to my website, DennisLabriola.com. That's Dennis Labriola, DennisLabriola.com. You can go to my YouTube channel, and right there you can find other episodes of the podcast, and you can see my blog and all of that. You also can reach out at that point, ask any questions, any information that you need. If you're looking for speaking engagements, anything like that, we handle all of that. And of course, you can find out more about my book, Seventh Inning Stretch, Reflections on the Game of Life, we'll give you the commercial. It's available wherever books are sold. So there you go. So thank you again. Thank you again.
Our privilege.
Okay,
Our
what a
privilege.
joy it is to know. And so until next time, I always like to leave you with this thought. And that is that whether you recognize it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you even believe it or not, God is and has been with you. Think about it. God bless.